Almighty Spirit of God, we know that you represent all good, even though at times we lose sight of that. And we know you also represent the Spirit and the Father of truth. And we open up today to that. We say yes to allowing your Spirit to flow through us, each and every one of us. That in this collection of folks together, it creates the consciousness in this building. Knowing that you're the only power, and you're present in each and every cell of our beings. And we know that you're only good. It's in that goodness that we say yes to life and to love, and to wisdom and to power in this moment. Yes. And so it is. Amen. So as we're moving through this book, which was the first book that Dr. Emily Cady wrote, and it's so interesting for me because we've looked now at 3 books over many, many decades of her writings. And we know that she lived to be 93. And when we see that this is the first book, you really get a taste for this woman's depth of what she understood. And what we see is that she has repeated ideas 3 times. And I always take that when a spiritual writer, or it shows up in the Bible, when it's repeated, it's really flashing some lights for us to pay attention. And that's what I see in these 3 chapters. She's done it again, but she comes at it from a different way than she did in the other 2 books that we studied. So that's, for me, what's so exciting, because she really nails today what the good news is for each and every one of us that want to follow the way. And she does it in the way only she can do it, in 3 or 4 pages. There's not a lot of fluff there. It's like nailed it, nailed it, nailed it as you go through. So we're going to try to make some sense of these 3 because they're very important for all of us if we're serious about having a spiritual journey. But let's take a look. It was written in 1868, 28 years before Lessons in Truth, which is what she became known and famous of through Unity, printing it all in the Unity magazine. At 1868, she was 20 years old. She was a teacher south of Syracuse in a 1-room schoolhouse. 1868. 4 years after the Civil War, she wrote this book. I'm just blown away when I put it in the context of time. I mean, this is a woman who couldn't own land. She couldn't vote. I mean, at 20 years old, having the teacher of this one, 20-some years later, she went on to New York to become a doctor, one of the first women doctors in New York City. But think of it, when you were 20 years old, were you writing, even thinking? I mean, somehow she had a connection with the divine that comes through in an amazing way. I mean, I don't even want to go back and talk about what I was doing at 20. But somehow she connected with the divine in a way that just blows me away when we put it in that context. So this chapter 4, lesson 4, is called The Christ in You. I say this all the time, use whatever word works for you. If Christ isn't the word that enlivens you in this process, find the one it is. The I am, or the whole completed soul, or Atman, or the Tao. It doesn't matter what word you put it. What matters is that you get the experience. And that's what she talks about time and time and time again. So she defines God this way. God is spirit, God is life, God is love, God is wisdom, God is power, God is all good. These are things that you and I want in our lives, right? I mean, no one would stand there and say, you know what, I don't want that. You know, someone else can have it. I don't want it. I want to be miserable. Or I want to suffer. No, this is what God is all about. And this is what you and I, if we understand this concept. Who and what are you? Who and what am I? And this, what I believe, is she's telling the essence here of the good news that was told 2,000 years before she wrote this. That as we get this peace, we are well on our way to an incredible spiritual journey in alignment with these things that you see on the screen. That's what she's teaching in this particular chapter. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created those. This is Genesis 1. As you can see, there's nothing here about ribs. There are no take-out ribs here in this story. And there's nothing in this story that says a woman or a female is less than a man. That was written later, chapter 2. I take this one. This is what I believe was the one that was closest to truth when that was written. But here's the key. Created us in the image and the likeness. That means the same essence. That means the raw material. That means the nature of the Creator you and I are created in. And until we begin to align with what that whole chart that we just saw in the PowerPoint before this, we are not living here. We try to do it on our own, don't we? Well, I'm going to figure this out. If I do this, I do that in my mind, then I can get to that. It's called analysis. Too much thinking. Right? It's not what she's teaching here. It's being. Not what you do, what you be. And it's so important as we go. So God's greatest expression in all the universe, in the physical, is what? You and me. Did a great job with the trees and the animals and the fish and the crawly things, right? All the flowers, diversity everywhere, beautiful. But none of those were created what you and I have. That's why we're the highest creation in the physical, but made in the same nature and the same essence of the Creator. This is the piece where we go sideways when we start really believing we're human beings, not spiritual beings. But when we really get this and we start to live from a place that we are truly a spiritual being, having this experience for a period of time, 70, 80, 90, 100, however many years, a very short period of time in eternity, that we're in this physical, but that's not who we are. And that's what she's saying we got to connect with, that divine that's inside of you and me. So he said, I was created in the image of God. So that's a pretty goofy way to look at it. Goofy creation. But you and I are all different, are we not? Unique in the physical, but not in the essence, not in the spirit. And that's the piece that she's connecting with here. And I believe this chapter is one of the most important chapters of all the ones we've studied. 24 and 4. We're 28 chapters. And she nails it here in a way that we have to pay attention to, that it's who we are. And as we connect with that, we begin to see some things happen. This was in Corinthians. This was Paul said, you and I are the temple of the living God. That's why I say to you, when you show up here, we're honored. Because you bring God. You're the temple of God. The temple back in the Old Testament, in Hebrew time, was a building. And as you see what the master teacher taught, it says it's no longer in the building. It's no longer in that ark of the covenant. It's inside you. The kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven is inside you, and it's here when? Now. Not after you die. It's here now. And it's inside each and every one of us. But it's only potential. You aren't automatically the temple. There's stuff we have to do to be able to begin to manifest and live at that level. And that's what she's talking about in this chapter. So in the Old Testament it says, Jehovah is in the midst of thee, was another word for it, another way to say it. But listen to what she says here, and this is where she said, you know, we kind of go sideways with this understanding. Jehovah, Spirit, Source, Creator, the I Am, the Christ, is not in the midst of the community at large, but in the midst of you individually. Many, many prayers are made for the community at large. And what her teaching is, no, you got to go to the individual. You got to go to you inside you and connect. And then as it comes out from you, you connect with other folks in the community. But it must always be, number one, an inside job, and it must always be through you individually. And then it becomes part of the community collectively. Very key teaching, I think, because sometimes we get this taught in a different way. You know, when human beings make a religion, we like to talk about, well, this is a blessing that comes to all those in that religion. That is not what the teaching is. All of it can come to each individual in that religion. But it's not going to come one fell swoop to that denomination and, well, we got it and you don't. That is nowhere near what's being taught. God is the father and mother of our spirit. Our spirit, our soul is our real self. That's the connection. That's where we're the children of. That's where we have that divine birthright, is in spirit. Remember, God can only be experienced in what? Spirit and truth. And so you and I are children of. We're God's children, the offspring of, in spirit. In that spirit within, and the soul within, whichever word is comfortable for you. And that's why the teaching can be that there is only one spirit. There's only one body, and there's only one mind. Coming from the creator of that nature and essence, raw material of that energy. I call it infinite life force, and it flows through you and I individually, is where we are connected as one. We're not connected in the physical. I can see you over there. I'm over here. I have a mind that I can take this one mind and change the mind however I want to. And so can you. That's how we disconnect as human beings. But when you go back or go up a level, whichever is better for you, when we connect at the spiritual level, we are all one. And one with the trees and the animals and all living things. We are spiritual beings in the likeness of our Creator. And I believe this chapter is the most important. If we don't get this right, none of the rest of it makes any sense for us. Because we're going to still be living as a human being in a human life. But if we get this connection and really understand who and what we are, and at what level that is, and how do we connect with that, as I say, you need to know how to connect with it when the rubber meets the road on Wednesday. When someone pulls out in front of you. Right? It's easy to get to it here. Right? Or sitting in meditation or prayer or with other like-minded people. But it's throughout what's happening in life is what's important. And how do we connect with that and make that happen? At that day, ye shall know that I am in my Father. Who was the Father? When Jesus called the Father, what was he calling? It was the I am within him. Later on, Paul called it the Christ. It's the divine, the divinity, the perfect soul, whatever you call it for yourself. In that day that you recognize that, he's saying here, ye in me and I in you. The oneness, we begin to experience it. We begin to feel it. We begin to allow that consciousness comes out from us and begins to change the affairs of our lives. It begins to change how we interact with people that we rub up against during the week. But it has to start from the inside out. Always, always an inside job. He goes on to say this later, when the Spirit of truth comes, he or she will guide you into all truth. We have heard Emily Cady say over and over again, put away all the books. And we had this discussion on Tuesday night. People are like, no, keep my books. Right? I know that feeling. I got books everywhere. But what she's saying is, as you connect in the Spirit with the essence that's within you, that Spirit of truth will flow through you and begin to teach you all things. All things. And what I'm suggesting this week is you take some time to just connect with the Spirit of truth. And I said this, I think, last week. How many of during the week said, please teach me? That's the connection we have to make. That's the piece we have to come forward with and say, please teach me something new. And then listen. And the intuition, the insights, the distinctions begin to come. And you're taught from the inside out. When that happens, you will never go back. It changes you at the core. And that's what she's talking about here, is let that process happen. And we have tried so hard with our human willpower and affirmations and prayers and running here and running there. And she's saying, take a deep breath, relax, and connect with the Spirit of truth, and let that begin to change you at depth, at the very core of who you are. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. It's the knowing of this truth is what this is all about. And it's only in the knowing, not hearing it. Remember, she said the doing and the expectation of this knowing is what gives us freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from anything that's holding you in bondage. Anything is the promise. And it doesn't matter if it's physical, financial, it's relationship, it's mental and emotional, or spiritual. The knowledge of this truth, the connection internally in the inside, is what will set you and I free. And our freedom is peace and joy and love and wellness and prosperity and happiness and bliss. I don't know about you, but that's a good definition for me for heaven on earth. It's a place I want to live from. And it's a place you and I can both live from all the time. If we follow the guidance and go inside and ask for a new thought. When we have one that's not empowered, when we have a thought that's not one of these, we have the opportunity to go inside and ask for that change. What would empower you? What would uplift you into this truth? That's our job, yours and mine. Lesson number 5, faith. We've had this lesson twice already in the 2 other books. I think the reason for it is this is what you and I now bring to the manifestation or the creative process. Who gets to create their future? Only if you know and believe that. But we can create our future out of our past. We can create our future out of the present. Or we can create a new future that we've never had before. We have that power. We've been given that power in the creation of us by the living energy that flows through us. I know there's a lot of words on this, but this whole piece I think is important. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find, and knock, and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks the door will be open. That's a promise. And I have a lot of people who say, well, Reverend Dan, it didn't work. I asked. How many times you asked? Well, once. We've seen the teaching over and over again. She says, keep asking until it happens. The repetition is how we put those seeds into the subconscious is how it begins to grow and becomes manifested, and we see it coming from the invisible to the visible. But most of us quit, do we not? When you really look back and say, I really wanted this in my life, and you really get honest with yourself, and you say, well, how often and how long did I ask? And most people are going to find that that's where it stopped. That constant, she said constant, continuous, repetition, until you get to the point till you see it show up. But there's some keys in this, and I love the way this was put together so we can use it to memorize those keys, or ASK, ask, seek, and knock. All of it is potential until you and I ask. It is not going to just fall on your lap or mine. Where do you knock? What does he mean by knock and the door will open? Where are you knocking? Somebody pointed to the knock on that hard head. Yeah, that's part of it. But I think what this is talking about here is knock on your consciousness, knock on your soul inside, open that door into the infinite. Move away from the human, move away from the ego, move away from the analysis, and begin to get in the flow of that oneness within. But if we do this, ask, seek, and knock, and continue to do it until it manifests, manifest being it shows up for you in the physical, in the visible, it's going to happen. It's a promise. And so my challenge to you this week is take something that you want in your life. And it doesn't have to be material. It can be emotional, it can be relationship, it can be financial, it can be whatever it is important for you, and begin to ask, seek, and knock. And really give it the old try for a week. And see what begins to happen for you. Because many times over and over we see in the Bible it says, test me out. Try me, challenge me to these truths. But if we don't challenge him, we're not going to see him show up. But the promise is there, and if you step into that promise and begin to show up, you're going to see what you're looking for begin to manifest. Now, I love what she says here, because it's very important. Many mistake hope for faith. Hope expects an answer in the future. Faith is a knowing it already happened. This is a really key distinction. Because what happens if you hope for the future will never come. Tomorrow you'll be hoping again for that future and that future. And you're pushing it away into the future. Faith is, I know it's already happened, it just hasn't appeared in the physical. Knowing that's already happened in the spiritual. And it's only in the invisible, and it's only now on its way, just like when we plant the seed in the soil, right? It's not visible, but we have faith that tomato plant's coming up. And that's the piece of faith that you and I have to bring to this creative process. And whether we know it or not, conscious or unconscious, we create every moment of our lives. You're creating with the thoughts that you're bringing forth, with the feelings behind it, and that's what you're creating your future to be. And you can say, well, I'm not aware of it. Well, that doesn't matter. The process continues. Whatever's going on inside in that process, you are creating, even if you're unconscious of it. That's how we get habitual thinking that comes round and round and say, oh my God, I've been here before, and here I am again. Why? Because I was unconscious of how I was creating my future. I was creating out of not thinking and letting whatever show up, show up. She's taught this before, last book. She uses this to manifest many, many miracles. It's been amazing, some that she talked about. When we begin to declare it is finished, when there's still no visible evidence, that brings the power to take it from the invisible to the visible. Who can say this? Only you. For whatever you're bringing from the invisible to the visible. Getting to the place where in your mind you know this is finished. My work's done. And it's here and it's coming, and I'll see it any moment. That's one of the most powerful affirmations she teaches over and over again. Third time in 3 books. It is finished. And stay there. Because what's normal here is if you even say that, what comes to you? Doubt. Does it not? And when doubt comes, you have to push it away. No, it is finished. And hold that belief system, hold that knowing. That's the truth. When you know the truth, it will bring you free. So as you're picking up whatever you're going to work on this week, make sure you add this at the end. It is finished. It is complete. It is in the spiritual, and it's on its way manifesting in the physical in my life. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the substance. What is substance? Substance, what stands under what isn't seen. So we have to hold this faith that it's done is how we bring the substance to it showing up. This is the piece most of us, including myself, fall short. This is where we allow doubt to come in. You know, she teaches at one point, keep this secret and sacred and silent from others. Why? Because this is where if you tell someone who doesn't believe like you do, is this not what's going to happen? Is you're going to hear some negativity come in and say, oh yeah, right. You really believe that? Boom, doubt. And it cuts it off right here. The faith is the substance underneath it, and it's gone. And if you look and examine your life, you're going to find many times that has happened for you, I believe. I know I have. It's like, wow, I listened to that. And it stopped it short. Now, no big deal. You don't have to judge. You don't have to condemn yourself. You simply go back and start the process over. And that's the journey. And that's how we create something different for our lives than what we're sitting in at this very moment. There is but one substance from which the real of all things are made. This substance is every present but invisible. We hear this in the teachings of unity. Charles talked about this divine substance. It's that energy that you cannot see that's under all living things. Some people call it life. But you know what? It's now called the quantum field. It's the field of unlimited possibility is what science now calls it. She was connected with it 100 and some years ago with a different word. Same concept. But out of all of that, you know, the whole thing in quantum physics is when you have the observer and the observer begins to see what they're bringing, it brings the energy to it, and it begins to develop out of the quantum field. Same concept, different words, 100 and some years later. But as we know this, if you remember what it said, all desires you have. There are no lack, no limits, no one saying you can only have this much, but you and me. For in him we live and move and have our being. In that energy force, in that creative life force we live. We have our being. And we are that powerful that we can control what comes next. We can control our destiny, our future, creating it out of this moment. Now, you and I all know people who have created their future out of the past. They're stuck in that past. And they're going to create more of it. That's how you get habitual thinking creates habitual life. But you don't have to do that. I don't have to. Once we understand this and we have that knowing, this is the truth that will set you free in what he was talking about. And it says later on, it says, all your needs, there is no limit here. All your needs will come to you according to the greatest riches of the universe. This is why I believe the master teacher Jesus called this the good news. He didn't call it gospels. He said this is the good news. Right? Never said worship me. He said follow these and you will be free. And what Emily Cady did 2,000 years later, 100 and some years ago, took those very same teachings and put it in 150-year ago language. This truth never changes. The process never changes. Those who implement it in their own lives are getting the future that they want. They get the future they can create. She said, if not, here's two fundamental principles is the whole secret of faith. Number one, the supply forever awaits the demand. What's she mean here? It's already done. It's already there waiting for you and me. It's potential, but it's unlimited, Alpha and Omega, forever and ever, for eternity. It's always there waiting for the demand. Who provides the demand? You. Second, the demand must be made before the supply can come forth to fill it. That's our job. That's our piece in this. You know, it's really easy to fall into the victim and say, well, it just didn't happen for me. Why? Because you never asked, never seeked, and never knocked. Those pieces we have to do to bring this complete, this is the allness. That's what I love about Butterworth when he said, God is the allness. That opens up our minds to be everything, all. And it's all available to you and I if we do this piece. Demand it. Demand is not wimpy, is it? No, it's demanded. This is mine to have. I know it is. And I'm going to stay there till it shows up. That's what she's teaching. And that's exactly in alignment with what the master teacher taught. Here's another way to look at it. Ask, believe, you receive. It's that faith piece in the middle when the seeds that you planted, when the demands that you made have not showed up yet. And that's where you got to hold your faith. That's where you got to hold and continue to do the work and know that it's already happened and not allow the doubt to come in and not allow the negative naysayers around you to stop you from knowing that it's coming. It is. If you demanded it and if you hold steady. All things are in Christ and Christ is in you. In him we are made full. Again, use whatever name's comfortable here for you in Christ. But here's the key. Then can we not say in faith, all things are mine here and now? How many of you woke up this week, every morning said this? All things are mine in the here and now. Not in the future. There's no future here at all. It's in this moment, this truth. And you begin to hold that truth. I don't care what it is that you're talking about. Again, we talk about all the different categories that humans want things, desire things. It says all desires. But we are not coming from that place of faith that all things are mine here and now. And not deviate. And not allow doubt to come in or negative naysayers to take you away from what is yours to have. It's your birthright as a perfect child of God. Persistent, unwavering affirmation that it is done and made visible now brings into manifestation whatsoever one asks or desires. I don't know about you, but I was taught that you can only ask for what I needed. Was I the only one taught that? That's a bunch of bull. It has never been the teaching. I believe it was taught by ministers that didn't have it all. And they were afraid to, well, you can't have it all because they couldn't manifest and demonstrate it themselves. But the teaching is, whatsoever you ask and desire, so shall it be. It is done, and it's made visible now. Finally, the lesson is giving and forgiving. We've talked about forgiving a couple times in this process, but she takes another turn with this, and I love this. This is the way we were taught it. Or I was. Maybe not you. For if you forgive men their trespasses, what about women? We don't forgive them. We put women in here. If we forgive people their trespasses, then this Heavenly Father will also forgive you. That's not true because this Heavenly Father never judged you. So there's no need to forgive you. But in what they're teaching here is, where is this inside of you? If you forgive someone else, you are forgiven. That's what this is really teaching. They didn't quite know how to do the translation, I guess. It was easier to make it some, Super Santa Claus in the sky is going to take your name out of the little black book. That's not what this is teaching at all. And went on to do this. If anyone says, I love God, yet hates his brother, what about the sisters? He's a liar. For anyone who does not love his brother or sister whom he has seen cannot love God. This was taught to put you where? In a bunch of shame and blame and upsettedness. This is not what this is teaching. This is teaching is if you and I learn to forgive someone else's stuff, what happens to us? We forgive our own stuff. But if we hold someone else in judgment and condemnation and criticism, we're only holding ourselves in that same jail. That's the bondage we talked about in chapter 1. One of the ways you move out of the human bondage that you have put yourself in. God has not put you and I in any bondage. You and I have put ourselves there by judging other people. We've then judged ourselves by that. Because how could I see, if I judge someone to be a jerk, how can I judge them to be a jerk if I don't know what a jerk is? Right? So when you and I judge someone else, we can only judge from what we already know about, which is within ourselves. And that's how the judgment comes back and judges ourselves. There's no God sitting up there going, I'm going to get you for doing that. That's not true. This is not about an angry and judgmental God, she said. It's about how you and I disconnect from our source. I love the way she's teaching this here. Because no judgment of you and I. Okay, I judge someone, I'm disconnected from source. I get that. But my job then is quickly to release that so that I can come back into alignment. Much healthier understanding and much more powerful to work. I don't have to sit around and wait, I hope my name gets out of the black book. That's not it at all. You and I have the ability right now to reconnect and get in the light by letting go of the judgments of others. This is one of my favorite scriptures. In him was life, in that creative life force, and the life was the light within you and I. This light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never overcome. You and I have this light within us. I don't know, when you were a little kid, we used to talk about not putting a bushel over your light, right? Yeah, no need to put bushels over the light. You want your light to shine, but the way it shines is we get connected with this source that's within us. Last week, she called it the Holy Spirit, the whole Spirit of God, or the Christ within, or the I am, or whatever. But as you get connected with that life is the light within you and I, and other people begin to feel it and see it. She said, now listen, when Dr. Emily Cady says, listen, I do. We are not automatons. We are not robots. We are made in the likeness and image of God, and like God, we have the power of choice, the power of deciding each for ourselves. This, to me, is the most powerful teaching. When you put it all together, this is what changes it all, is taking that personal responsibility for my life and my life only. And let live and let live. Everyone else has to choose for themselves. Right? I can't choose for you, and you can't choose for me. This is an inside job, individually. Remember when she said, all of that doesn't come to a community, it comes to you individually. And the choices you make, the thoughts that you think, the words that you use, the actions you take will determine whether you are continue to be connected with this source of the life energy and love, or you're going to be disconnected. And everyone sitting here knows the difference, do you not? Because we've experienced both. And our job is to stay connected on that path of light. There is but one force, but we each have the power of opening ourselves to this force or closing ourselves against it, whichever we choose. It can't be any clearer than this. It's a choice you and I face every day. Are we going to be open to the light and have all those things we saw on the very first slide be part of who we are and what we bring to the world? How are we going to show up today? Are we going to show up in the light, or are we going to show up way down the ladder in some place of judgment and condemnation and criticism? Because out of that comes your future. Out of that comes mine. And the more I stay connected to the light, and the more you do, the more we see our future begin to light up and get greater and greater and greater with every day. We have been created with the freedom of choosing our thoughts. No one else can choose your thoughts but you. No one. They can try to convince you, but then you got to take it in and make it your thought. This is the leverage for human beings. This is how we get a chance to get onto this path and make a difference and watch our future begin to change every day. Both conditions are dependent on the mental attitude of us. In the first, we may be ignorant of this light. I was, for a long part of my life. I've often sat and thought, I wonder if I had known what I know today, how my life would have changed. That's really not a very healthy place to go for long, but I've done it. You know? We can be ignorant of the light and not live there. Or, in the second instance, we can stubbornly refuse to come to the light because we hate the light. There are people who love the darkness and want to live there. I'm not one of them. I don't want to spend any time there if I can. And I hope that that's where everyone at Unity Harrisburg is about. Moving to the light because we love the light. No one can possibly radiate darkness while being full of light. It's physically impossible. It's spiritually impossible to radiate darkness if you're full of light. It cannot happen. Before going to bed, and this is one of her teachings in this last one, before going to bed, she said, see the person you're holding a charge against. See them and say in silence to them, I forgive you and set you free. It's called pardoning, letting them go. And as you free them and let them go, you become free. But if you're holding on to them with judgment and criticism and energy, you are tied into that negative energy at the bottom of the ladder. And your day and your future will be created from there. That's the choice that we have. So her daily practice was this, and I wanted to make it ours. And look at the power she's saying here. You know, she uses the term forgive, breaks it up. It's giving love for no matter what someone else did. That's true forgiveness. No matter what someone said or didn't say, no matter how they treated you, it's giving love for is what forgiveness, true spiritual forgiveness is. And that's the truth that sets us free. Otherwise, we stay entangled emotionally, and that entanglement will never allow you to move further into the light. But listen to what she says here. This spirit of perfect love and forgiveness will often heal the worst disease within you by opening the channel for omnipresent love and life to flow through unobstructed. Let me go back one second. The spirit of perfect love and forgiveness will often heal the worst disease within you by opening the channel for omnipresent love and life to flow through unobstructed. That's the power you and I hold in our hands today. For anything that shows up in our lives that we don't want, go through this process and then watch what happens in the unobstructed. We talked last week about this word salvation. Salvation means saved from the bondage you're in. And it says God's favor is, today is the day of saving yourself from whatever's in bondage. You have that power. I have that power. We have to choose, right? We have to choose the thoughts that take us to the place of finding the truth that sets us free. Okay? Let's go to the silence, please. Take a great big inhale. Spirit and oxygen fill your lungs and your bloodstream and your head. And then exhale out through your mouth. Let all the gunk go. You can do that a couple times if you wish. In that space within you, in whatever way works for you, that you connect to the divine. Remember, you have to ask. Connect me with you. Connect me with Spirit. And as that Spirit flows, all those attributes on that first page of life and of love and of power and of wisdom and of joy and of peace and love, these are all yours to have all the time. And in this moment, we say yes to that. And in the stillness and the silence, we feel it flow through us into every cell of our being. Omnipresence. And the greatest prayer is thank you, thank you, thank you. And so it is.